The last thing that I want to cover and go over is how do we implement these into our lesson plan? How do we use these interactives in our lessons, and how do we use them maybe with our interactive whiteboards or the technology that is available to us? Now, my classroom specifically is a 2-to-1 classroom, meaning I have 2 kids to every 1 computer. I also have an interactive whiteboard, and a lot of times with these interactives, I use them kind of as part of my lecture time to have the kids involved in what I'm talking about, to make them pay attention more, because they never know when I'm going to let them come up to the board and touch things and move things around on the interactive whiteboard. However, in something like this is a actual lab that they are going through and doing, so they're reading through how can Samantha get her ordinary rabbits to produce more of the fancy rabbits. And so they have a mission. They talk about the fancy rabbits. They have you read through it and understand it. Now, if your students are anything like my middle schoolers, they're not going to go through and read this. You have to make sure that they take the time to read it. Usually I set timers and make them read out loud one to another. And then you get to your explore. So you have your ears, your color, and your ears, and you hit go, and you can pull the different animals to over here, and we can have that. The female you can have be white with long ears, and you can hit go, and it's going to produce all of the possibilities in a Punnett square. Now, what I might have my kids do is either use the interactive teacher guides, things like that. This would be an example of where I would have the kids doing work. However, if I go back and I find a different interactive, such as my Layers of the Earth one that I showed you, I can go and use that exploration. This is where I would have it probably up on my interactive whiteboard, and I would implement it using that. I would have the kids come up and move it, and then read out loud what the thing says. So oceanic crust, I would put where oceanic crust is, and then I would have the students read that mini paragraph there. And once it's done, I might have them find the asthenosphere, and oh look, I did it wrong. And this is just helping them to find where the different parts are in the layers of the earth, and they can just keep moving it around. Usually I let the kids stay up there until they get it right, so that they feel successful. And the others, they usually watch, or they might have a friend that might be like, hey, try this one. And usually if the person coming up to the board is wrong, several others had gotten it wrong. And I always, compliment them on the fact that, hey, it's okay to get it wrong. And we make it a learning moment in the classroom instead of an embarrassing moment. And I think that's very important that you do. Now, what you're going to do from this point forward, and this is the end of my video segments, is I want you to take these videos, I want you to take the directions, use the district implemented lesson plan, and I want you to create a lesson plan for next week even as to how you're going to implement an interactive tool into your week, whether you implement 1 or 2 or implement the same one twice. Just showing me how can you implement these tools and how can you add these to your lessons and enrich your lessons with the students. I think that enrichment is very important. I think these interactives of having the kids look at the things and having the kids do the different information is very, very important. And if you don't, they're not going to ever understand the information. And understanding the information is the whole point of learning and the whole point of these interactives. So that's what you're going to do. You're going to download the form under lesson plans, and then you're going to submit it into the forms. Whether you copy and paste it or figure out how to make an attachment, that's fine. Now the final thing I want to show you is in our notebook. If you go to lesson planning, here is where you should have already implemented your interactives. And then you can implement your lesson plan. You're going to download this attachment, and then you're going to copy your lesson. But you can also do an attachment. I've given directions here for you. And that's it. I want to see your lesson plans. I want to be able to understand it. And I think sharing them is so important so everyone has access to different ideas. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for being a part of this session.